Leaving the Spotlight, episode 1 in Justin Bieber's Seasons docuseries. Just hit YouTube. And, my big question is, what can we learn about his Lyme disease from watching this? Hey everybody, it's Dr. Tom Moorcroft here. As we've spoken before, Justin Bieber recently told us about that he's been suffering with Lyme disease. It's been impacting him over the last 2, 3, even maybe possibly 4 years. We don't know all the details yet, hoping to get a little bit more of that from checking out the Seasons docuseries. But what was really interesting is, this first one sort of seems to set the stage for what we're going to be learning about what was going on with Justin. And repeatedly you see him talking about how he's so passionate about performing and, being in the studio and being on stage. And this is really the most important thing to him, and he really wants to tell that story. But then you hear about how hard it was. And they don't really tell you a lot about that. His friends start talking about, well, Justin got kind of worn out and he needed to kind of get healthy. But, after he got healthy, he was doing really well, but then he got tired again. And then after he got tired that time, then he had to cancel, his tour, and then he wasn't on stage for almost 2 years. It's really interesting because when you look at what we know is that, sort of the build up to this docuseries is Justin saying, hey, the big thing that was going on with me was Lyme. And it's so common. People are like doing well and then they have an event, right? And then they start working and they get a little bit better. Maybe they're getting healthy again, but then, something else happens and now they're feeling tired. And it's just this constant struggle, kind of up and down. And this really can be taxing mentally. But physically, we're sort of seeing these waxing and waning symptoms. And definitely, it sounds like Justin worked his butt off and the not being a touring performing artist, I can't even imagine the stresses and strains of going through all this. But, I'm a doctor who is in a busy clinical practice. I'm my wife and my daughter and my hobbies and trying to eat right and exercise right. That takes up a lot of my time too. And so these are stressors that are going on in my life, and I know you have your stressors as well. And so it was interesting just kind of to hear this because while our story may be different, sort of the common themes that come through can be the same. And this kind of sort of trying really hard to get healthy and then crashing and being tired and then maybe doing better and then really tanking is a story that we hear frequently, in Lyme disease. The other thing that one of his good friends said was his brain, people who are performing all the time, their brains get worn out, and they were talking about even waking up in a city and not knowing, where you are. But, I think that the stressors and strains that they experience certainly are unique to performing artists, but at the same time, this is exactly what people with Lyme are often saying. So not only do they have that fatigue and that super tiredness, and they can't get restorative sleep, it's their brain feels worn out. They can't think. And then the thing is they transition into this part of, for 6 months, Justin is in this extremely dark place. And this commonly happens. It's like you don't know what's going on. And from the stories of Justin, it sounds like doctors weren't initially able to figure out what was going on. And then we see that, he's in this really, really dark place. But then, he gets asked by Ariana Grande to come back on stage. And he talks about how hard it is to get back doing those things that he loved. But it had been 2 years, and this is the passion that had ignited him. This is all he ever wanted to do, and he still couldn't do it, right? And this is one of those things. It's like a lot of folks are ill with Lyme. They're having the fatigue, the brain fog. Their muscles ache. They don't really feel like they can get moving. And everyone's like, oh no, just kind of pick up yourself by your bootstraps and get going and get back out there. And sometimes it's really not that easy. Can you imagine? How many of us haven't dreamed at one point of being like a mega superstar, like a performing artist, like being in the movies, a celebrity, being like Justin out on tour, being like Ariana Grande? And can you imagine one day not being able to do that? Or even worse, physically being able to do it except you're a little tired, but mentally and emotionally you just don't have what it takes to go do the one thing that was your number one passion. And that's a lot of what I hear people talking about. It's like they're just like happy to get up and be able to make their food, and it's like how it's so hard to go to work because you can't, a lot of people aren't even able to feel comfort in their own family because they're just feeling, sort of, separated and stuff. And it's one of these things we see frequently. And, it's interesting to see that Justin made that leap and got back into it. But the more interesting part was around minute 8:30, and then a little bit later, we see multiple shots where he's got a little pink, wrap on his arm with an IV coming out and what appears to be a bag holding, an IV, because IVs can be done on, there's like a self pump that you can utilize, an auto pump. And what's interesting is, like, this is where in this one short 11-minute, first episode, they start to change. And you see that we know from before he got a diagnosis. Once he got the diagnosis, now he's dropping new songs and he's out, going to do a tour again. And in the docuseries, you see very clearly that there's a change in the tone of his voice. And I wrote some stuff down that I think is important, because he said as this stuff was happening, he realized it wasn't all about him, and it's about helping someone else who's gone through whatever, helping them go through whatever they're going through and being able to talk about that thing. And I just thought that it was such a nice thing to hear from someone who has so much influence, because he was doing it because that's what he loved, and he was getting that attention. And now he's like, hey, can I give back? And it's interesting that a lot of us have to go through this change where we have this illness, and then we realize that, like, the system of medicine that's told us, we have the answers, isn't always got all the answers. And sometimes it takes 2 and 3 years of suffering to find it. And to be able to get out there and start to utilize your celebrity status to really be a platform to help other people talk, about what's going on with them. And as we know, a lot of what's going on from Justin seemed to be depression and this really dark mood. And that is something that really commonly happens in Lyme, other tick-borne co-infections, in Bartonella infections. And in children, it can be triggered with mycoplasma, pneumonia exposure, strep exposure. So we have acute behavioral changes happening in people who are exposed to these infections. And these infections can be continuous and persistent, leading to persistence of these mental illness. The problem is, maybe some people have pure mental illness, but other people have mental illness triggered by these infections. And I hope that through the remainder of this docuseries, we're going to learn more and more about that. But, I was hoping to get a little more out of the video about what was going on, but I can see the setup. I can see sort of how they're Hollywooding it and getting us interested in what's going on. And as a physician, I'm like, well, the little bit I know over here is starting to make sense. And and this is commonly how I see it in my patients. When you get them on the right treatment and you make the right protocols and you make the necessary changes both in their lifestyle as well as in the treatment protocol, you start to see these changes. You start to see them taking the next step. And maybe for Justin, it was getting up on the stage, but maybe for some of you out there, it might be, going out and watching a movie, at a movie theater. Maybe it's going back to school. Maybe it's going and grabbing a part-time job. Maybe it's going back to church for the first time in a long time. Whatever it is unique to you, you need to take that one step, But as we know, we need to be well enough to be able to do that. And I hope that what we're going to get out of watching the rest of this is even more of that. So for anybody out there who's looking for a place to really kind of be able to share what's going on, to talk about what you're going through and ask others for the support, we do have a support group on Facebook called Empowered by Lyme. So all you do is head over to Facebook, type in Empowered by Lyme. We ask a couple of questions to screen people, and then, this is a positive support group. So anybody who's needing some good, accurate information about Lyme disease, co-infections, mold illness, pandas, pans, this is a safe place. If you're looking to talk about your experience and ask others there so that they can positively support you and help uplift your health, and you can share with them and uplift, please join us. So again, that's Empowered by Lyme over at Facebook. And certainly subscribe to the YouTube channel, like this video, share this with some of your friends, because I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I almost want to go over and grab YouTube Premium or something so that I can just watch the whole series and really get to the bottom of it for you. But I do really like being able to tease out these little pieces, and it's really cool to see when he starts to get the effective treatment, you start to see the attitude change and the way they're foreshadowing what's to be coming. So, and I want you guys all to think about that. It is that diagnosis and treatment, and when you hit that, you'll all be in great shape. So please smash that like button, comment below any questions. We'll be happy to get back to you. Thanks again for joining me. It's Dr. Tom Moorcroft, and we'll see you next time.